Just normal. Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. Welcome back, everyone. My dad just had an experience going to the Middle East, and Starlink revolutionized air travel. Is that right?
Yeah, so um, I flew on Qatar. It's very interesting. It's very hard to pronounce that name correctly because everybody does it differently. But Airways. And on the way over, we were on an A350, which had Starlink, and on the way back, we were in a 777 that had Starlink. So when you have Starlink on an airplane, it's not like, a lot of people don't have as good connection at home or work. Um, and it's 220 megabits per second up and 20 megabits per second down. So it's like using your computer, wherever else you might be, but better. And so it changes the whole way you think about computers. It's also available as soon as you get on the plane. They don't turn it off below 10,000 feet. And so you're on their Starlink from the moment you leave the gate, or even when you're still at the gate,
Wow.
until you land and get to the gate. And then you go off into the airport where they have crappy Wi-Fi, and it's just a different experience. So, in fact, the reason I told you that is that on the way back, I uploaded my short to LinkedIn on the airplane,
Nice.
and I can do business, on the airplane. That was a new experience because it used to be the Wi-Fi was so crappy they wouldn't let you do streaming or video or download apps or anything that would be heavyweight. Now,
Well,
whatever.
and that reminds me of what I was doing right before the show so that we could talk about what we're going to talk about, which is Google releasing their giant model. And I had Gemini go search through all the transcripts, or I was having it do it, but then I guess I interrupted its process because it doesn't have the output. I wanted to go find specific predictions we've made because you sent me a text a few days ago saying that we were not that we have to shift our narrative, but I believe that we've been talking about this. Early on back in I think it was like episode 38. I think we talked about how Google was kind of totally messing around. But I think the last few ones we've actually been pretty spot on with what actually just happened. Are you aware of anti-gravity?
Uh, I know what anti-gravity is, but
Well, no, no.
you might be
So
referring to something more specific.
yeah, anti-gravity was something released by Google, which is basically a IDE. So I was expecting them to integrate. I was expecting them to take on Claude Code and Codex in the command line. Just drop the best command line coding agent that could ever exist. I still think that's going to happen, but it's going to come later. And so I was expecting that. I was expecting to all of my coding problems to be solved by Google. But instead of taking on both OpenAI and Anthropic, they decided to take on Cursor. So they released something called Google Anti-Gravity, which is an IDE. And apparently, from all my geek coding friends, I haven't been able to play with it because I've been at DevConnect, which is a cryptocurrency conference here in Buenos Aires, and I've been completely involved in that, including speaking right after Vitalik Buterin on Tuesday in a totally about AI and blockchain. But they released Google Anti-Gravity, and apparently, from all my geek friends, it is very, very useful.
So the thing with Gemini is whether it's anti-gravity or it's Banana Pro,
Nano
or
Banana, which I've also been playing with. Yep.
all of the different components that are application specific are boosted by Gemini 3,
Yep.
including the chatbot itself. So the reason I thought we had to retract our previous point of view is that we had believed at some level that Google had lost its position as the preeminent AI company. And so everybody was going down the path of, well, their search traffic is going to hell. They don't know how to monetize whatever happens in the chatbot. So this is like an existential threat for Google. And it's only in the last 3 weeks, which I think covers the time since Gemini 3 was delivered, that it's completely flipped. And now Google is the one to beat Gemini, and Banana whatever. I can't remember what it's called, and anti-gravity, according to you, and is now competing with everybody. It's not just OpenAI, but it's Anthropic and Perplexity. And, there's word out there that everybody should short Perplexity, even though it's not public. And although they've got a pretty strong investor in Amazon. It's flipped enough that in the last week, there's stuff coming about OpenAI, and I think you forwarded that to me, that Sam Altman,
he's scared.
Either unwittingly, I didn't read it, but said something that indicated that there was a lot of risk in their $500 billion valuation. Because the adoption rate of ChatGPT is beginning to level out, whereas Gemini is going up. And others. So if OpenAI loses its momentum and its perceived leadership, all of the deals they're doing give it a huge amount of risk because they're very highly leveraged. It's a little hard to tell how they're leveraged because they have these kind of round trip deals going with Oracle and others. But it appears that they're very leveraged, and their revenue doesn't support their valuation. Their revenue growth doesn't support their valuation. And so maybe this is like the sign that OpenAI is going to tank, which, if it does, is the end of the bubble. Then we have to get into fight or flight mode, and we have to get into flight.
So let me share what my friend said. He said that basically Google got its LLM team to collaborate with their image generation people, something which even OpenAI wasn't able to do because OpenAI has their Codex products, but it's totally separate from the chatbot products. And the anti-gravity is basically bringing it all together. And also within Google the Gemini chatbot, it's all together. I just had it go searching through YouTube, through Gmail, through all these different things. So they've been able to integrate in this really interesting way that reminds me of some of the historical conversations we've had. And I would actually, that might be a good way to go, is like 2001, 2002, Google kind of got going. Have they always been able to collaborate the entire company on doing one thing? Because we've talked about how they aren't very good at products. But are they good at sort of cross-organizational, all on a mission?
No, they're not. Ever. It's an experience that might be able to be learned with the right leadership, and that's actually relevant because I saw this post that turns out Sundar Pichai is actually a wartime CEO, right? That he doesn't look like it, but he pulled the company together to
well, and also, I mean, isn't it also because Sergey Brin is now messing around? He's kind of taking his soft power and actually coming back and making things happen, right?
In theory, he's running their AI operations. But, well, who are the actors at Google? Demis Hassabis?
Oh, that's right. Google. Yeah. Demis. Yeah.
So there's a bunch of people there. And I don't think it means that Sergey is the dude, right? He's very smart and he's like a senior scientist type thing with some extra weight because he's a big shareholder. But Sundar, this is actually really interesting because Sundar doesn't need to boast and be Alanish or even
he's very quiet. Yeah.
He's very quiet. He's very studied. He's very thoughtful. And yet he's managed to pull this off because it is him. It's not Sergey or Demis or any of the others that he's pulled the company together. And this issue of a wartime CEO is really interesting because you need a wartime CEO when you actually believe and understand that there is an existential threat. And so, I mean, there's parallels that you can look at. So one parallel is Microsoft wiped out the competition when they did Microsoft Office. And that was an integration play. They took 4 separate applications and turned them into a single product. Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and I'll remember the fourth. But Outlook. And so they bundled them and sold them for $99, what previously had been more than $1,000. And none of the competition got on wartime footing.
Where was Microsoft at that time? What was going on with Microsoft? Were they already declared the winner?
They were the winner in the operating system, but they were not the winner in enterprise productivity, which is what Office managed to enable them. And then later on, when Gates stepped back and put Ballmer in charge, he was like a wartime CEO when there was no need for a wartime CEO. They were doing really well, and he's like jumping on couches and being bombastic and buying Nokia, which was
why
really
didn't they
unnecessary.
Need one?
Because they were doing so well. Like, you don't need a wartime CEO if you're already in charge, if you're powerful. Yeah. So, the perception about Sundar Pichai is that he was the wrong guy to put as CEO because the company had been coasting on search for so long that when OpenAI chat GPT showed up and made such a stir, it looked like they were behind. And yet he quietly went to work, pulled the company together, had a single AI organization. And this is all about being able to forecast what's going to happen. It's like they figured out what Gemini 3 needed to be in order to compete, which, as you said, is really an integration play. And
and not only that, but they also seem to brought in all of the TPUs onto full on. Here it is, wartime TPUs. And I just want to note something really funny. While you were talking, I got on Google Gemini and asked for Sundar Pichai's history. And number one, it says the wartime product manager from 2004 to 2014 with the toolbar crisis, 2006, the Chrome bet. So he's the one who got Chrome, that they couldn't rely on competitors, Microsoft and Apple, for browser access. And despite then CEO's Eric Schmidt's objection that a browser war would be an expensive distraction, Pichai worked with a small team to build, somewhat stealthily, to build Google Chrome. And then consolidated power with Android. He took over the Android division from its founder, Andy Rubin. So the history was there, just nobody was paying attention to it because he's a quiet guy.
Because he's a quiet guy.
Yeah.
So now we're in this situation where everybody believes. So, my thing is always, if everybody's going in one direction, let's go in the other. So now I'm beginning to think, well, how strong is Google and can OpenAI? The really interesting thing I've understood, which I don't know for sure, just read about it, is that OpenAI, it introduced the chatbot chat, where your chatbot can be in your chat with you. They introduced that. That's really interesting, right? You can sit there and you and I can both have a chat going with the chatbot, with ChatGPT. So it'd be an equal participant in a chat. That's a really interesting concept. So OpenAI is still thinking about stuff and doing interesting stuff, but it's not integrated, right? So that was a separate thing that was done, and they have a separate application CEO versus the AI CEO, and the way the organization has grown up, it's a very distributed, unclear organization, and so I think but they could fix that. If Sam Altman is a good CEO and really understands how this works, he can go fix that, but he would have to be pushy about it.
Which he seems like he's been hiring. He seems like he is.
He is pushy, but he has to know what to push.
Yeah,
and that's not clear at this point. So anyway, this is the geopolitics that I've seen repeatedly in the computer business. We're in it now in the AI business. Like there's shifts going every couple of months. Things shift again. So you don't succeed by going with the shift. You have to get ahead of the shift.
Yeah,
and that's what Google seems to have done. Has gotten ahead of the process so that now everybody has to catch up.
Well, can you go more into the TPU? Do you know much about the TPUs? Because it seems from my
tensor processing units. So tensor is a Google idea about neural networks, I think it is, and a tensor processing unit is designed to enable. So what Nvidia did, because they came out of the game business, it was easy to adapt their chips to doing LLMs, specifically LLMs. So one of Nvidia's
ASICs,
problems
right?
is no, not ASICs. They're actually full processors, graphics processing units, but scaled for training LLMs. So it's really good for that, and that's what everybody was doing. So Nvidia is worth more than $4 trillion because they were doing what everybody needed. There's a kind of, if you get up above the fray there, if LLMs are not the future, is Nvidia's chips the right chips? Tensor processing units, I think, were designed more for neural networks. This is all about real-time learning, more than LLMs. And I'm way above my pay grade. So no,
I'm looking it up right now, and I just said ASIC. I asked if Nvidia was an ASIC. No, Nvidia is a GPU, but TPU is an ASIC, application specific integrated circuit. So they can only do one thing only, which is matrix multiplication.
Okay.
So
do you understand that? I don't understand that, but
I don't understand what an ASIC is. Now I want to go understand what it is. The cool thing about LLMs is I don't need to understand the math behind it anymore. So a matrix multiplication, I'm going to go study that later. And then under the hood, it's a systolic array. So there's data flow, there's the wave, there's efficiency, the evolution from a secret weapon to ironwood. What is ironwood? There's a lot of things going on. So Ironwood version 7, which is where we are now. So they've released one in 2025, and it's the inference age, optimized specifically for serving thinking models like reasoning and chain of thought.
So I'm also looking it up, and it says specialized hardware, ASICs optimized for high volume matrix operations that are fundamental to neural networks. So I was right.
Yeah.
Right? They're designed for neural networks. Yep. Neural networks are not LLMs. They're a different component of an entire AI system, but they are the part that's relevant to real-time learning, right? The learning from context, not from being trained on a certain number of Sunday mornings. So. What do you call the things? An LLM.
Transformer.
Anyway, no. What are the elements?
Weights, biases, neural networks.
No, little, when you're doing yes or no on a
tokens.
Letter. Tokens, yes, that's it. Thank you, tokens. TPUs aren't good at that, right? So TPUs are good at something else, but that something else is what's becoming important. And it could be that because Google came up with the idea of tensor units and then built tensor processing units, that their chipset and their technology would be more relevant for post-LLM competition.
Yeah.
And, this is at the level of not anybody agrees about it, which is always the fun part, because then you can't be proven wrong. But, it's a good theory. But Google is coming into its own because it's got all the stuff that's relevant to all of the different parts of a completely integrated AI system, including LLMs, including neural networks, including natural language, including all the stuff they've been working on for the last 20 years.
So, and this reminds me about Nvidia, what happened with Nvidia this week, which was also pretty important, which is that they did not miss earnings, but then their stock went up like this, and then it went like that. And some people believe that that's because Google is now coming into town and saying, well, exactly.
Partially. It's the ecosystem, right? The ecosystem at large is, we know we're in a bubble now. Everybody agrees we're in a bubble. So when's it going to end? Right? When you know that you're in a bubble, it's already over. That's my rule. And I forwarded the crazy, stupid tech newsletter to you because that's what Fred and are talking about. Is like, if you've been through it before, you know how the cycle works. And as soon as people start asking, are we in a bubble? We are. And then when they start predicting the end of it, it's already happened. And I'm glad to see they agree with me on that. But so it's not just me. So we're already there. And so if OpenAI becomes weak because it can't continue raising money to spend these ungodly amounts of money they are to build data centers and buy GPUs, they will be under-equipped to respond to Google, in the sense that Google not only has this ridiculous cash flow already, but has been working on it for 20 years and has pulled it all together into a defensible strategy.
Interesting. It's not like it's not like they've missed out on AI. All they missed out on was LLMs, which they invented, but then they missed out on the application of it, and now they're here with the actual application of it.
No, they bought just as many Nvidia chips as anybody else, so they processed their LLMs. They just didn't invent it.
Oh, so it's the combination of the TPU and the Nvidia chips.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they use both of them. And so, in a server, it's way too simplified, but you got a bunch of different stuff going on in there. The data centers that are being built to train LLMs are super specific to building LLMs. But Google's been running an infrastructure for decades that has millions of servers in it distributed all across the world, right? So they have a mentality about how you do that allows them to think more broadly than, we just got to process LLMs. So they have data centers with NVIDIA GPUs in it, and they have data centers with TPUs in it. And, so they have a broader point of view. I'm making it up right now because I don't really know this is true or not, but it's kind of what feels right.
Yeah, no, I also feel that right. And there's a total philosophical tangent we could go to about how revelation works, but not only in the biblical sense, but also in the information sense, the knowledge sense,
and the political sense too.
Yeah, that's where it's headed. Yeah. Okay, but actually, let's go into one part of that, which is China, because I actually used the line you gave me. I think it was either last episode or the episode before, where I asked you, okay, so we're in 1997 to 2001. What is different about this time? And you said China, and Google. It's going to be Google versus China. That's what it looks like to me right now. It looks like the United States government is going to do what is essentially in wartime, and they're going to do capex, large capital expenditures, take apart in Intel. I also learned about TEEs, which are trusted execution environments, which we can talk about later. Some guy put it into space, and there's one you can use in space right now called it. So the U.S. government's going to. Yeah, the U.S. government's gonna. I mean, it's already is allied with Google, right? If I were to say that the U.S. and Google are basically the same thing, would you agree or would you disagree with that?
I disagree with that because what is the U.S. right now? We can't even tell what we are. We know what China is. It's run by one guy, Xi Jinping, and everybody kowtows to him, and the whole structure is built around him. So, to the degree that he's intelligent about making choices, China can continue to improve its standing, its power, its influence, and so on and so forth, including in AI. But in the entire Chinese strategy, we don't really know if it is a strategy or just what happened, is built around open source. It's one of the reasons that Meta has hit a wall, because they bet on open source, and it turns out the Chinese are better than they are. And so now they're trying to rebuild a proprietary environment, but they're so far behind everybody else, they have to go out there and spend megabucks to buy people. It's not clear that that's a good way to go about it, but it's what they're doing. Otherwise, they'd have to give up and say they're not a player. And Zuckerberg can't do that. That's Meta. So here in the US, you have Meta, you have OpenAI, you have Google, you have Anthropic, you have Miramarati, you have all of these things. I think I saw there are 498 AI companies with more than $1 billion valuation.
Wow.
We have 498 things. China has 2, maybe more. Because this new one, Kim something. But everybody is open source. So they have one thing, really. They have open source. And Meta has decided that's not competitive, so they're being proprietary, and so is everybody else. And that is a free enterprise system. So it is really Central Communist Party versus a free enterprise system with a little randomness thrown in there by Trump.
But let's go back into history, because you said, so I would like to ask more questions about this Google and the U.S. government and the sort of alliance between them. The Google
It's
had
not just Google though. They have alliance with
I get
OpenAI and
it.
Anthropic, everybody else. So.
Yeah. No, and Anthropic sort of famously said no to Trump, which was really interesting because I bet they were saying yes to Biden. But yes, it is most of the big tech companies to get to where they are need to make some sort of implicit or explicit alliance with the U.S. government, including Google, who at one point, I assume, bowed to pressure from a more activist Obama administration when they finally made the decision in a boardroom to get rid of "Don't Be Evil," because that really "Don't Be Evil" from 2001 to 2013, 2014, somewhere around that time. That "Don't Be Evil" was sort of like the hippie America, San Francisco tech 1968, straight into Google, straight into Stanford, and then it
Bring
ended.
it back to the U.S. government. I'm trying to figure out where you're headed here.
Well, so I think that was the U.S. government. I think that was pressure from the Obama administration to say, Google, help us with defense, help us with AI, help us with drones.
Look, if you align yourself too closely to the U.S. government, you will fail competitively. The U.S. government is not an entity that can figure out what's stuff going on a quick basis. I.e., just look what happened to the Department of Justice not pursuing Meta. Well, actually, a judgment against them. And judge said, look, this is ridiculous. You can't go back 20 years and say they plan to be this monopoly when you haven't even proved they have a monopoly. So the U.S. government is not an efficient, focused entity. It's like this thing that's in the air. It's part of it. So sometimes you have to get along with it by doing one thing or another thing, but it's not, you have to rise above that. So the conversation we're having about Google, having foreseen what would happen and then working its way into a place where everybody believes they're the force to be reckoned with, had nothing to do with the government. Absolutely nothing to do with the government. They figured out the technology, they figured out their way of approaching it, and they're viewed as an effective competitor, not because of the U.S. government. Sundar is showing up at the White House and going and doing his thing that he has to do with Trump because he has to. Everybody has to. Tim Cook does that too. Everybody's doing it. But it's not what makes you competitive or not competitive. The U.S. government is not something to hang your hat on, whereas Xi Jinping has hung his hat on the Chinese Communist Party, and it's paid off big time, right?
Okay.
He now rules a country with 1.4 billion people and a huge economy, almost as big as ours. So we're now in a power competition, but that's a whole different landscape.
I would like to reevaluate my question then, because it's not, I agree, the U.S. government is dispersed because there's multiple parts of the U.S. government, including Congress, including the executive branch, including the judiciary. Judiciary we talked about with the DOJ, that's sort of an interesting side tangent. Congress can bring these tech companies in and to a sort of a group. But then the executive, the executive administration is a very interesting thing. It expanded largely with FDR, and now we're at the point where it's kind of on its own. And that part is really interesting, including there's various parts of that, including the intelligence agencies. And the intelligence agencies are part of the government, and they seem to be sort of outside of the part of the government you were just talking about. And those guys definitely have connections with a lot of the military. And there's DARPA, and there's all these sort of other, there's all these floating organizations that do have influence, including Oracle, right? Oracle is serving the CIA for their database.
Not really. Actually, Amazon provides the primary service for the CIA. Oracle might, but these are big, multifaceted IT systems. They're all in there. Amazon, Oracle, Microsoft, they're all in there. I don't know what point you're making.
Just that there are aspects of there are aspects of the U.S. government that are interfacing with big tech companies. I mean, the most sort of direct one was during COVID, where YouTube started to take down, censor various things. Facebook did it as well, and that was a direct line between the Biden administration and the heads of people at Meta and Google and all that. Like those things actually happened. Like they did.
That's
censor
history. That's history now. Doesn't matter. Palantir. Andrew, I mean, sure, companies serve the purposes of government, but they have to maintain their own strategy and point of view about how to do that. They can't kowtow. SpaceX, great example.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about SpaceX and the government, because that's a very interesting point. Because Musk is doing his own thing, and he interfaces with the government, and he's doing rockets, which do have a very intimate connection with defense. But does he have clearance? Does he have any sort of clearance? Do you know?
No, takes too much drugs. So the person who primarily deals with the U.S. government is what's her name, the president of SpaceX.
Oh, interesting.
Right on the tip of my tongue, whatever her name is. Musk depends entirely on her. It's the only person, I think, that in the whole ecosystem where Musk really does depend on someone else completely. But she's the one that manages the government contracts and goes in front of the DoD or whoever it is. And wish I could remember her name, but it's too early on Sunday morning. Comes up right away if you say President SpaceX.
Yeah.
So, I mean, SpaceX is really interesting and in the Elon Musk world because unlike Tesla or Neuralink or Twitter,
Gwynne Shotwell.
Gwynne Shotwell.
Yeah.
She's, Trump's basically handed over and said, just do it. Right. He goes and plays with the rockets, but the business is done by Gwynne. It's the only instance of him doing that in all of his companies. Right. He's a hands-on guy who likes to make decisions and promote himself. But on SpaceX, he's actually not invisible. And he is the guy that came up with Starlink. Gwynne didn't come up with that. So the idea that you can use your own rockets to put up 10,000 satellites and have a robust communications network, no one had ever thought of that before. Amazon started it before Starlink came out. But they made so many mistakes along the way that they are way behind. So, and the Chinese government's doing it now, and the Europeans want to do it, and everybody sees the model and goes, "Oh yeah, that was like really smart, so let's do it." But meanwhile, he's the only one that has 10,000 satellites up there providing those communications. Excuse me.
And so Shotwell is basically responsible for all of the government interfacing with all the government for the legal, the regulatory kind of things. And she may have clearance, but and so then there's NASA as well, because there's a relationship between SpaceX and NASA.
Well, NASA was the first customer.
NASA was the first customer. Interesting.
Yeah, first one to give SpaceX contracts, because they were in a world of hurt, right? They're sitting there firing these huge rockets with Russian engines, and they don't know how to deal with it. And along comes Elon Musk and fixes the problem. So she's the one that stands up in front of the committees, both in Congress and on the executive branch.
It's super
She's acceptable.
Because I guess there's a meta point here to be made, and this will get back to Google, which is that because in China it also is Xi Jinping is definitely the undisputed leader of China in a way that can't exist in the U.S. But even though that exists, there is a decentralization that happens within China. So like there are various forces within China because one nation is just too big to have one person completely control every single aspect of China. And so there's all these like complex way that the governments work with technology in ways that are really complex for any analyst to understand.
Well, no, it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah.
Well, let's not call it simple. The CCCP is the federal government in China, but they don't have states; they have cities. Yeah. So Shanghai, the mayors of Shanghai, of Beijing, of Guangzhou, of all of the 20 million plus population cities, which are like 25 or 30, they control the local revenue. And they spend that revenue as they wish. And they are all powerful in their cities. So if you read about it, there's decisions made that the CCCP is not in control of, but it's the mayors of the big cities. So that's the complexity in China. The complexity here partially is Congress because it's two branches, but also the fact that states have their own constitutions and and states' rights. I mean, Trump has challenged the. I mean, it's really interesting. He exists on both sides of this question, which is why it's so hard to deal with him. But he believes in states' rights when it comes to abortion. But when it comes to him spending money, he wants to tell the states what to do. So
interesting. So let's bring this back to Google. So because I want to make the assertion clearer about it's going to be Google versus the Chinese in terms of AI. Because do you agree or do you disagree that AI is now a national security issue for the United States and China?
I'm not sure I do. Because the kind of people that are framing it that way have no idea what they're talking about. They're just looking at big AI companies worth billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars, and China with no companies, like except DeepSeek and stuff like that, with the central government. They're going, oh, well, it must be that the big tech companies are really powerful in this domain. But the big tech companies aren't doing China. They're doing the U.S. And this is our typical arrogance. It's like, we're the U.S. This is where all the important stuff happens. So it has to happen here. And then once it happens here, it'll be diffused through the rest of the world. And China is actually at a competitive level, at least in open source. So I don't think that, I think it's much more about missiles and boats and airplanes. I think it's about hardware. And the software goes along
interesting.
with it.
Okay, interesting. So I like that. So the AI is essentially it's a good story to say that AI is a national security risk and that we're in this existential battle with China. And there are some, perfunctory kind of important parts of it, but when it comes down to it, it's still the old school. Yes, there's a lot of technology involved, but it is rockets. It's like, electronic warfare. It's all the things that happened in Ukraine, some of which was AI.
Yeah, which AI has a role to play in it, but you also have to have the hardware, to bomb people.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting. So, but what about the sort of soft power? Because the United States in the 1950s and the 1960s, a huge part of the reason why the United States was so powerful was not only because of the hard power, which was a huge part of it, but also because of Hollywood and also because of our ability to tell stories that captured the rest of the world. There's a role with that with AI, right? Like AI has a role with that.
So let's see, to tease that out, you'd have to say that AI has some influence over cultural imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, nobody knows what the hell AI is going to do to culture. There's a lot of experimenting going on, and Sora and Banana.
But none of it's good. It's all slop.
Well, no, it's not all slop.
Yeah.
Like if you were growing up,
interesting. Yeah.
In the 80s, 70s, and 80s, that television was considered the vast wasteland. That like 80% or 95% of what was produced was garbage.
Yeah.
Meant to fill the airwaves.
Yeah.
Still
nothing
true,
new.
right? Nothing new. Same thing.
Yeah.
You have to look at the little 5%.
Interesting.
And the 5% is meaningful. It's just, you could just begin to see it emerge that people are beginning to master the technologies of AI to produce stuff that's watchable or consumable or whatever it is. But I don't think AI has influenced culture enough yet to play that role.
And there's something different about it too, which is that you don't. I think one of the key aspects of AI and cultural connection, which is already clear, is that it's very cheap for anyone to do. That all like as long as you have a creative skill, you can do it. Whereas before, Hollywood required millions and millions of dollars and sort of gatekeepers.
Yeah, well, we don't actually know the answer to that question because production technologies have already made it a lot cheaper, and yet movies still cost more and more. All the technologies. I mean, this is what Gemini are doing with TK. It's like you can go back and look at it, and you go like when the personal computer showed up, and when the red camera showed up, and when the iPhone showed up, well, all the production values that you could create got a lot cheaper, and yet movies still cost, somewhere between $50 and $300 million. And video games still cost $100 to $500 million to develop. So, when's that change? That's when people master the tools of AI. AI is just the technology. You have to have the tools that allow you to shift the real cost of producing creative effort. And a lot of the cost of creative effort is human beings cooperating with each other.
Still the human beings. Have you found any cool technologies that are not AI, but they're like in that world of helping content to create it easier? Yeah. What are some of them?
Yeah. There's one called popcorn.co. There's one called Kubrick, Cuebric. We have a whole set of them, actually. And venture capital, it's not just that you have it, it's also, is it somebody that's going to make it successful, and so on and so forth. So there's all kinds of stuff popping up all over that enables more facile, more digital production of movies, video games, etc. But it has to be diffused through the whole population of people that do that kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they have to learn the tools, have to decide which tool to use. Enough people have to decide which tool to use that some tool becomes more common and everybody learns it. Like Adobe did back in the PC era. So there's a process, and it's a process of human beings learning to use the tools, which, human beings, you might accelerate their learning curve, and the faster generations of technology show up, the faster we have to adapt to them. But we're still human beings trying to figure out how to use all this stuff. Without human beings, you don't need movies or video games, right? It's like all you have is robots. They're not going to give a shit about watching a movie.
I think that's the part that I think so many people with all the fear games have a hard time understanding, is that the human being is so essential to everything, and just like even no matter what happens, all the value will accrue to those, that the moment where the human meets the content or the work or anything like that, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take another 5 minutes because I'm exhausted today. So, so Google, what should we make predictions about what will happen in the next month or 2 months? Like, did you ever make predictions when you were in the 90s? Did you ever?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, what are some predictions? That
80s, when I wrote my newsletter, I made not necessarily famous because I haven't told a lot of people about it, but I made a bet that Next would be $1 billion valuation company.
Yeah.
And I think I have mentioned this, but
we talked about it last week. But what is it?
And the component of Next that is now represents the core technologies of Apple is way more than 1 billion. So I was right. I just didn't predict the path it would take.
Yeah.
I thought Jobs would pull it off, that he'd learned enough, but actually, according to Brent's book, Becoming Steve Jobs, he needed number 1 and number 2 to be number 3, and number 2 was Next. And so he learned negative lessons from Next, but he figured it out and applied them at Apple. So Apple uses the same OS that started with Next OS. That is the core of Mac OS. They built their own processors based on ARM to wring as much performance out of the Macintosh and the iPhone as possible. Blah, 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 all that stuff.
So let's make some bets here about Google. What can we bet about Google happening in the next month or 2?
Oh, I don't think it's about the next month. What was being reflected is true for the next month. You have to go much farther out.
6 months.
No, like a year or 2, 5 years. 5 years. In 2030, is Google going to be the primary AI company? And will OpenAI have collapsed? That's the interesting question. And it almost doesn't matter about the others, because that's the way it is right now. It's OpenAI and Google, ChatGPT versus Gemini, all the collateral stuff. Who's got the better strategy for the long term? Wow, it's really hard to ignore the fact that Google started out behind and now appears to be ahead in the space of 3 years. That's the scale you have to be on. So is Sam Altman sitting there sweating it out, like in the middle of the night going, oh, fuck, Google beat me. What do I do now? I don't know. How smart is Sam Altman? How much are you willing to bet on him? Obviously, people have bet a lot of money on them, but they, and if you really believe that Google has built the right strategy, they're going to be, I think they're worth $3.5 trillion right now. So they might have cracked 4. They're going to be like the Nvidia of AI, but software, right? Except they have TPUs, which are a little bit competitive with because Nvidia has introduced new chips that do different things, right? They realize they can't just ride the GPU.
Yeah.
I don't know Rockwell. No, Rockwell's an LLM chip, but so they got new chips, and you got Jensen Huang, and he's like really smart. That dude,
Yeah.
he's going, okay, we got the LLM thing nailed, you know, this or that, but what else should we be doing? I mean, this level, this strategic level is just really fascinating. It's what always gets me going. It's like, what's Jensen Huang really worried about? Sport to the speeches he gives, in 2030, what's he worried about his position relative to ARM, relative to AMD, which has its own GPU chips now, relative to Intel, maybe. So in that world, what is Jensen Huang worried about in 2030?
And they never talk about it. And they
you don't talk about that.
Yeah.
It's a public company. You don't talk about 5 years from now.
But they all talk about it he has an inner circle that he talks about it with, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And how do you draw those things out in interviews? Because they don't say that. They know how to not say that, right? How to say what they're worried about.
Yeah, no, this is like if somebody asks you for an NDA, they obviously don't understand.
Yeah, interesting.
It's not a contract that's going to legally protect you. You have to be smart enough to know what to talk about.
Yeah,
based on who you're talking to.
And Jobs was the master at that.
Yeah, but there's others. Sundar, Jensen Huang. I mean, these guys, they're not talking to you about everything that's going on. They're just talking to you about what's visible right now.
Okay, super interesting. That'll be the next one. We'll go do deep dive when I'm got a better, clearer thing. So tune in next week.